Chapter 8. The man's name was Bern Sanderson. He was a young man who rode a good horse and was mighty nice and polite about taking his hat off to Mama when he dismounted in front of our cabin. He told Mama who he was. He said he was a newcomer to Salt Licks. He said that he'd come from down San Antonio way with a little bunch of cattle he was grazing over in the Devil Rivers County. He said he couldn't afford to hire riders, so he'd brought along a couple of dogs to help him herd his cattle. One of these dogs, the best one, had disappeared. He'd inquired around about it at Salt Licks, and Bud Searcy had told him that we had the dog. "A big yeller dog?" Mama asked, looking serious and worried. "Yes'm," the man said, then added with a grin. "Then the worst egg-suckering camp robber you ever laid eyes on. Still you blind, that old devil will. But there never was a better cow dog born." Mama turned to me. "Son, call Old Yeller," she said. I stood frozen in my tracks. I was so full of panic that I couldn't move or think. "Go on, son. I think he and little Arliss must be playing down the creek somewhere." "But Mama," I gasped, "we can't do without Old Yeller. He's—" "Travis!" Mama's voice was too sharp. I knew I was done. I turned and went toward the creek, so mad at Bud Searcy that I couldn't see straight. Why couldn't he keep his blabbermouth shut? "Come on up to the house," I told little Arliss. I guess the way I said it let him know that something real bad was happening. He didn't argue or stick out his tongue or anything. He just got out of the water and followed me back to the house and embarrassed Mama and the young man nearly to death because, of course, he came packing his clothes in his hand instead of wearing any. I guess Bern Sanderson had gotten an idea of how much we thought of Old Yeller. Or maybe Mama had told some things about the dog while I was gone to the creek. Well, anyhow, he acted uncomfortable about taking him. "Now, Mrs. Coates," he said to Mama, "your man is gone, and you and the boys don't have much protection here. Bad as I need that old dog, I can do without him until your man comes." But Mama shook her head. "No, Mr. Sanderson, he's your dog, and the longer we keep him, the harder it will be for us to give him up. Take him. I can make the boys understand." The man tied his rope around Old Yeller's neck and mounted his horse. That's when little Arliss caught on to what was going on. He threw a wall-eyed fit. He screamed and he hollered. He grabbed a bunch of rocks and went to throwing them at Bern Sanderson. One hit Sanderson's horse in the flank. The horse bogged his head and went into pitching and bawling and grunting. Well, then this got Old Yeller excited. He chased after the horse, baying at him at the top of his voice. And what with Mama running after little Arliss, hollering for him to shut up and quit throwing rocks, he was altogether the biggest and loudest commotion that had taken place around our cabin for a long time. When Bern Sanderson finished riding the pitch out of his scared horse, he hollered at Old Yeller. He told him he better hush up that racket before he got his brains beat. Then he rode back to us, wearing a grin. His grin got wider as he saw how Mama and I were holding little Arliss. We each had him by one wrist and were holding him clear off the ground. He couldn't get any more rocks to throw that way, but it sure didn't keep him from dancing up and down the air and screaming. "Oh, turn him loose," Sanderson said with a laugh. "He's not going to throw any more rocks at me." He swung down from his saddle and he came and got little Arliss and snuggled up him until he stopped screaming at him. Then he said, "Look, boy, do you really want that thieving old dog?" He held little Arliss off and stared him straight in the eyes, waiting for Arliss to answer. Little Arliss stared straight back at him and didn't say a word. "Well, do you?" he insisted. Finally, little Arliss nodded and then tucked his chin and looked away. "All right," Bern Sanderson said. "We'll make a trade, just between you and me. I'll let you keep the old rascal, but you got to do something for me." He waited till little Arliss finally got up the nerve to ask what, and then said, "Well, it's like this. I've hung around over there in that cow camp eating my own cookings till I'm starved. I don't hardly throw a shadow. Now, if you could talk your mama into feeding me a real jam-up meal of woman-cooked food, I think it would be worth at least a dog. Don't you?" I didn't wait to hear any more. I ran off. I was so full of relief I was about to pop. I knew that if I didn't get out of sight in a hurry, Bern Sanderson was going to catch me crying. Mama cooked the best dinner that day I ever ate. We had roast venison and fried catfish and stewed squirrel and black-eyed peas and cornbread and flour gravy and butter and wild honey and hog plum jelly and fresh buttermilk. I ate till it seemed like my eyeballs would pop out of my head and still didn't make anything like the show that Bern Sanderson made. He was a skinny man, not nearly as big as Papa, and I never could figure out where he was putting all that food. But long before, he finally sighed and shook his head at the last of the squirrel stew. I was certain. He sure wouldn't have any trouble throwing a good shadow on the ground for the rest of the day. A good, thick shadow. So he was saying that he was so skinny that he couldn't even cause a shadow in the sunlight. After dinner, he sat around for a while talking to me and Mama and making little Arliss some toy horses out of dried corn stalks. Then he said his thank yous to Mama and told me to come with him. I followed with him while he led his horse down the spring for water. I remembered how Papa had led me away from the house like this the day he left, and knew by that Bern Sanders had something he wanted to talk to me about. At the spring, he slipped the bits out of his horse's mouth and let him drink, and turned to me. Now, boy, he said, I didn't want to tell your mama this, and I don't want to worry her, but there's a plague of hydrophobia making the rounds, and I want you to be on the lookout for it. I felt a scare run through me. I didn't know much about hydrophobia, but after what Bud Searcy had told about his uncle that died, chained to a tree, I knew it was something bad. I stared at Bern Sanderson and didn't say anything. And there's no mistake about it, he said. I've done shot 2 wolves, a fox, and 1 skunk that had it. And over at Salt Licks, a woman had to kill a bunch of house cats that her youngins had been playing with. She wasn't sure, but you couldn't afford to take any chances, and you can't either. How'll I know what to shoot and what not to? I wanted to know. Well, you can't hardly tell at first, he said, not until they've already gone to foaming at the mouth, and then they're reeling with blind staggers. Anytime you see a critter acting that way, you know for sure. But you watch for others that aren't that far along. You take a pet cat. If he takes to spitting and fighting at you for no reason, shoot him. Same with the dog. He'll get mad at nothing and he'll want to bite you. Take a fox or a wildcat. You know they'll run from you. When they don't run and try to make a fight, shoot them. Shoot anything that acts unnatural, and don't fool around about it. It's too late after they've already bitten or scratched you. Talk like that made my heart jump up in my throat till I could hardly get my breath. I looked down at the ground and went to kicking around some rocks. You're not scared, are you, boy? I'm only telling you because I know your papa left you in charge of things. I know you can handle whatever comes up. I'm just telling you to watch close and not let anything get to you or your folks with hydrophobia. You think you can do it? I swallowed. I can do it. I'm not scared. The sternness left Bern Sanderson's face. He put a hand on my shoulder just like Papa had done when he left. Good boy, he said. That's the way a man talks. Then he gripped my shoulder real tight, mounted his horse, and rode off through the brush. And I was so scared and mixed up about the danger of hydrophobia that it was clear into the next day before I even thought about thanking him for giving us Old Yeller.